The difference between good and great is they found a way to consistently live above the line more of the time, live above their standards, equal to their standards, or above their standards more often than not.
Yeah, so that self-motivation to stay above the standards, that's the part where we talk about, like, can you really teach that? Can you really have a person is like a personality that's like, "I will not live below my standards. I'm gonna be above that. I'm always gonna be that kind of person." And, I don't know if you can train that, hire that, teach that. Um, I would hope that any successful and at least what we found is we've talked to agents all over the country, those who are successful, you're right, they are up above that. Where it gets interesting is when you're a business owner or practitioner, as we talked about before, and you're responsible for people below you. This is where it gets interesting.
Oh, I love this.
So, Jared, this I turn it to you. This is an area you've had a lot of success in helping and coaching people. How do you help your employees? You create this standard of accountability. First of all, do you create that line for them? Because personally, you create it for yourself as an entrepreneur. Now what? What about the rest of your team? Do you kind of talk about that together? Do you force it upon them? Do they force it upon themselves? How do you handle that?
Whoa, doggy. This is a loaded question. This is awesome. I love it. So here's the challenge. And Matt, I want you to laugh, agree, whatever, disagree. The reality is high achievers set standards and they more often than not achieve the standard. The challenge or the challenge of an achiever with standards is they expect everybody around them to do what? Live up to that standard,
Yeah.
that same standard. And so not everybody's like me. Not everybody's going to operate like me. So I think it's encouraging as we have a group of people. I've hired employees and agents and sub agents, and I have all whatever. I don't know. As we bring them on, just thinking that they're going to adopt my standards, that's a big miss right away. It's a big miss. Now, what I'm not saying is my company values and the standards we've adopted as a company, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is I hire on new people. There's something that is so critical. You've got to sit down with those individuals. You need to understand what's important to them. You need to have them have a voice at the table on what those standards would look like so that it will allow them buy-in as they're working towards achieving these standards. Now, certainly you can guide and steer them to make sure they're hitting standards that are appropriate, and there may be a few that we just have to give to them. But there is such tremendous value as you're building an organization from a leadership standpoint is to get their feedback, collaborate with them, allow them to develop the standards. Look, man, if you're going to dump a bunch of standards down someone's throat and they're living below the line, so what? This is what they're saying. So what? I'm living below your standard, Matt.
Yeah.
And that's the culture that you're going to get. That's the culture that you're going to breed rather than collaborating and allowing them to say, this is important to me. This is a standard that I can buy into. And you know what? I'm going to commit to live to that standard, Matt.
There's a consultant that we've worked with in the past, and he's a very successful C-suite consultant. And he talks a little bit about kind of this concept of how do you get an employee to live to this line of accountability. And I've never had an interview where someone's like, actually, you know what? Those aren't my standards. Every single one of them are like, yep, that's who I am. And what they've done is they've committed already that are part of your organization, as far as those standards and what they fit to. So, then the rest of the stuff of the personal stuff that fits into that, that's that unique part of like how you bring it all together. So if I was talking to a successful financial shop right now, and I was to go in and say, hey, I want to do some consulting, take you guys to the next level. The area that I would start, and by the way, the reason that I'm saying this is I'm trying to take a little thunder from Jared. Jared actually, as a consultant, came into our practice and did this. And he said, what are your standards? And we didn't have the same standards. We were all over the place. We couldn't tell you what they were, and mission and vision help propel those standards. But writing those standards down, getting on the same page was critical. And then as we hired people, we brought them in to those standards. And, as our listeners are sitting there, if you're a self person just by yourself, then great. Think about this personally. But if you have one staff member, I would ask yourself, what are our standards? What do we do? What do we don't do? And just make it that vague, because you'll be amazed what answers you get from everyone else.
Yeah. And I think that there's company standards There's interdepartmental standards,
Yep.
then there's individual standards. And so this isn't like this kumbaya, one approach will fit everything. Let me give you an example. And I love your interview example, Matt, because I bring on, I'm quote unquote hiring an agent, a sales agent that's going to come on. And let's be honest, they're going to be green. They're just starting out. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to pick the phone up. So I hire someone on and I'm like, hey, Matt, oh man, I love you. You're a really great fit. Hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna just have to work really hard and you're gonna have to make a few phone calls and stuff. And there's gonna be, you're gonna have to knock on some doors and you're gonna have to follow up on some leads and stuff. Are you in? And he's like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. And
And Matt starts that job, and guess what happens? It's a train wreck because when hard meets hard, what's he realigning himself with?
yep. And I love when you interview the business owner and the agent in that spot. The agent in that spot is like, "No one gives me any direction around here."
Yep.
And you interview the agent or the business owner or the, practitioner or whatever, and they say, I don't know what the deal was. When I was his age or when I was her age, I did this, this, and this, and that's how I do it. And he will never do any of those things. She will never do any of those things." And it's like this total misalignment of like, well, no wonder they're not successful. I don't even know why I have them around. They don't get anything done.
Yeah, and here's a fallacy too, Matt. Let's say I know you're a high achiever. If you're interviewing me, more often than not in interviews, you will actually project your achiever on them. Oh yeah, he's a great person, loves it. He'll work as hard as me. He'll do what I do. I didn't communicate standards, but no worries, Matt will get that. Right? Rather than interviewing and say, "Hey Matt, I just want to be really clear up front. This job is a sales agent. Here's our standards and I want you to commit yes or no." And it's okay if it's no, then that's okay. We're not a right fit and let's part ways. Number 1, 125 phone calls a day, 15 emails, 5 Facebook posts, X number of direct messages, X number of mailers, and knock on 10 doors. Are you in, yes or no?